in this episode.
His mom would be having conversations with her friends and family members, and they would say, well, you need to be more realist. You need to be more realistic. And she goes, I don't understand what you're talking about. Like, being realistic, what does that even mean? So you're telling me I should tell Derek that he can't play Major League Baseball? That he doesn't have the ability to do that? He's 8 years old. What am I supposed to do? Now, if you're like 21 years old and you're not even in the realm of Major League Baseball,
37-year-old, your career's over, John.
then that's totally different, right? Or even like a 15-year-old, like, keep attacking, man. You still got a bunch of years left. Like, you have 3, 4, 5 years left. If you're lucky, you don't know what's going to happen. Roll those dice, buds. Go out there and get it, right? What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of The Closing Pitch. My name is Spiker Helms, and this is a show about people, culture, and how to create a winning lifestyle. We're back in St. Louis after a pretty good season overall. I would say it was good. A lot of lessons learned.
There always are.
A lot of things tested, which is always great.
There always is.
And some really cool experiences, too.
There always are.
And that's why we do this, Dave.
It's true.
But I always think that every season, and I'm sure everyone can go back, like every season, which is an 8-week season, you can always look back and you're like, man, each time is different. It's the same, but it's different. New group of core people, 12 players, 13 players, sometimes even 17 if you have POs and everything like that. But you have different personalities mixing in with each other, and then you're trying to take this group of men and trying to go win ball games for 8 weeks. When you're playing, you don't realize how hard that is until you start coaching and dealing with all the personalities and all of the different skill sets that each player has. And then you have like more respect for, like, I'm thinking, well, let's just scale that up. So like CEOs that have to deal with a bunch of managers, middle managers, and the middle managers have to deal with their employees that they're trying to get those engineers to like move in a direction. I just find it super fascinating. Like, as a player, you don't think about that. And then you realize, damn, this is actually really hard.
Well, I mean, every year there's a lot of the same that you see for sure. I mean, especially because the constant in this factor is, I've coached 17U baseball for 12 years. The difference is I get older each year, so I get a little bit more wiser, or maybe a little bit dumber if depending on who you ask. But you certainly, every group is different and every personality is different, and how they gel is different, and then that creates positives and negatives, and then you always learn, like, there's always 4 or 5 takeaways from each year where you're like, man, we really had to teach this differently this year. We had to really focus on this aspect of the game or this aspect of the team culture or this whatever, more so than other years, which is fun. I mean, that's what coaching is, right? I mean, but you ask Coach K at Duke, because he's had, 45, 50 teams there? I mean, crazy amount of talented kids, and I bet you can go back and be like, you know what? That 89 team, man, they really had all this going, but they were really bad here. But that 94 national championship team, that was totally different, but they could have been better here, and he could probably tell you stories about each one. And
even like, this team catapulted the future into getting the national championship. There's just a lot of factors.
And here's the beautiful part of it. Every single one, I kind of look back and reflect this time of the year because we're not coaching right now, and we're kind of starting anew for next season. I always kind of look back at this time of the year anyhow, and every single one of those players that we've had through our program that have, been have impacted it. So sometimes they've forced us to make decisions and changes that are going to better the program for the future. So future kids are impacted by issues that have come up now. Or we've done really, really well and found out, hey, this is a great way to communicate with a young man in this area, and now that's going to impact the future in a positive manner. So, it all just, I think if you're a good coach, it all kind of comes in stride, and you just got to let it keep building on itself.
100%. I remember each season for college, we had exit meetings. Did you guys have exit meetings?
I never had good exit meetings, by the way. Mine were always like, Dave, you got all this potential in the world, but this was back when I was a young student too. This one very good. You had all this potential in the world, but you don't apply yourself. You could be so much better. Anyhow, go ahead.
I always was so nervous for like those exit meetings though. But it was one of those like nervousness is like, man, I'm just going to get ripped for the next like 30 minutes. And then but it was good because then you started realizing like the hard truth of like, oh, these are the things that I have to actually work on moving forward to actually progress in the career or actually move forward and actually keep my starting position. And my dad like warned me of these exit meetings because he played college football. And he was like, Spike, just know there's another class that's coming up right behind you. And don't be surprised if your college coach goes, you had a really good year, but I have this shortstop that I just recruited, and we're going to have you battle it out. And I was like, damn, really? He's like, yeah, because you were that one kid that they said to the other guy. And I was like, oh, that really makes a lot of sense. But for the topic at hand today, it kind of parlays. I just wanted to give you guys like a recap of like how the season went, for the 8 weeks, and then just give you kind of like insight of like what we think, during the season. I'm sure, the coaches that are listening to this, they're like, oh yeah, you can find some similarities and some differences as well. But what I want to talk about today is right now I am, studying finance. I'm increasing from economics, my economic background in school, and I've been just kind of slowly moving across. And there was a trader that was talking about the emotional side of his trades. And for those people that don't know about finance, you have day trading, you have midterm trading, you have long-term trading, and you have the super long-term, which is like decades out. I'm not going to talk about financial advice or anything like that, but the mental side really rung a bell with me, and it was very equivalent to what I experienced in my career. And he referenced a book. I forgot what book it is. I'll try to go back and figure out which book it is, and I'll put it in the show notes. But in one of the chapters, he said it just was an unlock for him, and it was called The 5 Capitals. And to make good decisions as a trader, and I think this parlays into a baseball player's career, from an emotional standpoint, is that to make really good decisions, you have to keep your 5 capitals in line. And usually what people do is they don't keep those 5 capitals in line, which those capitals are 1, obviously financial, 2, your physical side, 3, relationships, 4, intellectual, 5, spiritual. And anytime those are compromised, you can make a bad decision. And for him, that decision could be a $40,000 decision. So, but for a baseball player's career, that's not going to be like a $40,000 or a $50,000 decision. But from day to day, playing this game, playing pro ball, I think the most games I played in one season was, if I included college, from fall all the way to the following fall, I bet you I put in about 200 games one year. That was when I went from summer college baseball to fall baseball, then to spring, the full college season, and then I played pro ball all the way up to the next fall. It was about 200 games. And what happens from each day to day, you start getting compromised as you get into day 30, day 40, day 50. And those compromises can sneak up on you, which again, financial, I don't think that's going to be a major touch point, but the physical, the relationships, the intellectual, and the spiritual, those things really make an equivalent to a player's career. And when you can go into a slump. So if you're a pitcher, you can go back out there and then you end up letting up 3 runs, 4 runs, 5 runs, and then it just stockpiles itself. For hitters, I've been in that situation where I've actually gotten into a rut went 0 for 10. Then I actually hurt my back. Then I have to get back into the lineup. Then I get hurt. Then I get hurt again, and then I go in for another 0 for 10 drought, and then it just stockpiles. It's like a death spiral. So how do we prohibit that death spiral? And I feel like these 5 capitals are the secret for any player to push the envelope and move forward. So let's go through these really quick. So The first one is financial. Obviously, having stable ground and being able to support yourself day to day. That's, in most cases, a lot of people can do that, right? Number two, which is the physical. This is something that a lot of players don't understand. Even our players this summer didn't have a full grasp of it, but they started understanding it. And I think that they're pushing forward on this, is that it's probably going to be in the back of their mind as their career moves forward. A lot of our players started breaking down with velocities. There wasn't major injuries, but you started seeing velocities go down. You started seeing tired bodies. They weren't running down the line fast enough. Their arms started getting a lot sore. They couldn't recover fast enough. And one example that I like to point to is LeBron James spends a boatload of money, boatload of time on just his body, on his recovery status.
So does Brady.
All the top athletes, like that's the game.
It's the only way they can still do it at their age.
Well, that's the game when you get to that. It's not how can I make small gains in the weight room. It's how can I recover faster than the next guy. And that equates to getting good sleep, making sure that you're not on your phone super late. Like example, I have an Oura ring on me right now. This thing is an absolute lifesaver when it came to my sleep, because I was not getting ample amounts of sleep, and I started noticing throughout my day that I was making really poor decisions and I wasn't allocating my time correctly. Well, what happened was I was like, Shondi, like I am so tired. Like I feel like I have clouded brain. I've never had this before, and I usually would sleep really well. What happened was I started noticing that this phone, I was on my phone all the way up until I went to bed, and that blue light was causing me to get really crappy sleep. Also, my diet was not in check, so then I was getting really bad sleep because I was full all the way to the brim and trying to sleep on that. That was not good. So being able to assess it and seeing the problems, and then going back and saying, all right, this is my process. This is my routine. When I'm about to go to bed, I have to execute this, or the next day is just going to be crap. And a lot of players don't understand that. Like, you have to understand who you are, which is, I could be a night owl, perfectly fine. Or I could be an early bird, perfectly fine. You just have to know that I have to get 8 to 9 hours of sleep. Like, that's a must. That is, I can't have 7. I can't have 6. I can't have 5. I have to get 8 to 9, because then for the next day, that's going to make sure that I'm able to play to my abilities. And when you start getting into college, or you start getting into that, what our route was with 17U, like our schedule is a gauntlet.
Sure.
Like, you're playing dudes every single place that you're going to.
Sure.
So how are you able to recover fast enough? And another thing is, when we were traveling, what's the typical meals that guys eat?
Crappy.
Well, obviously, but like, it's fast food.
Yeah,
it's
fast
like,
food.
yeah,
It's
because
quick and simple.
it's quick, it's simple. Also, like, it's cheaper.
Sure.
I heard a podcast with there's a guy that is a nomad entrepreneur.
Okay.
He travels all over the world. He only sits in one spot for 6 months at a time. He's a website developer. And the question was, and he makes really good money. What are you willing to pay for the most? Is it like sports cars? Like, what's your thing? And he didn't even like think about it. It was like no hesitation. Good food. And the podcast show host said, oh, good food, like really good restaurants, everything like that. He's like, no, good, wholesome food where I know where it has come from, because it completely dictates how I feel the next day. I want my food to be, obviously he's into like the vegan side of things, but like grass-fed cows, making sure that it's not processed completely. Like he doesn't want it to be completely processed, stuff that's actually clean. And that really rung a bell with me, because we are athletes trying to do something physical, and we're eating McDonald's, Chick-fil-A's, Subway, like all the stuff that you probably shouldn't eat. And we're wondering, why does my body feel so bad?
Right.
Like, hey, why do you feel so sluggish out there? He's like, man, coach, I have no idea. Did you get enough sleep? They're like, yeah, I got like 8 hours, 9 hours. Well, what time did you go to bed? Well, 2 a.m. What were we doing all the way up to 2 a.m.? I was on my phone. Shit, man, no wonder you're lagging.
Do you think so? I'm looking at this list that you sent me. Okay, the 5, and you haven't even gotten into a couple of them yet. But as you were kind of explaining it, I was trying to contemplate how this would be approached from a younger player's perspective, because that's our base of people that listen to the show. I would think that, in the financial or physical or relationships, and you're going to get to the other two coming up, when I was hearing you explain it, because you have to have those in order, and I totally agree, because I think of it this way. It's like you only have a certain amount of headspace you can allocate towards your game, right? Ideally, you want to be able to just be firing all cylinders. You want to be right with all those things. You want to be able to focus on the task at hand. You want to be focusing on your training, your game, your mentality, your health, your fitness, everything. You want to be in the right space going in, so when you go to compete, you're not distracted. I view a lot of those other things as distractions, to where if you're focused, or if you're worried about money, if you're worried about getting the right food in you, or you're not feeling good because of the right food, you got the bad food in you, or vice versa, you're getting distracted. So you're losing some certain amount of focus that you're not being able to allocate towards the field. The only thing that I would say to that is, and that's 100% right, most people don't even get that until their 20s.
Mm-hmm.
Like, golly, I don't even know when I totally started to grasp it. I think I finally got at least a little bit of that, because when I was in high school, I didn't have a clue. Certainly younger, I had no clue. And to be honest, you get away with it. Like, dude, I could go eat a Big Mac and go play a doubleheader, and probably wouldn't have been my best, but I would have gotten through it. Now, if I had ate a Big Mac right now and went and tried to play, I'd throw up and I'd be done, because I'm 35 and not shape. But
that's the thing, though. A lot of people give that as an excuse, like, "Oh, I'm young enough; I can do all that."
Well, sure, but so here's my point to this. So, if you're a coach, okay, and you are, and you have a group of players, let's say they're young high school or middle school athletes, okay, they're starting to understand some of what they should be doing. They certainly understand rights and wrongs, okay. How do you start to explain that to them? How do you do that as a coach to them, to where they can now start to understand, how do I get all of my focus on this singular thing? How do I not let all of these other, because that's what it is, a distraction.
Mm-hmm.
It's a controllable distraction, if you will. How do you do that?
It's step by step. It's not going through a whole speech and explaining all of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just living your life and trying to figure out how to be the best at those 5 things. And that's the beautiful part about it. It's not going to be like, oh, I got all 5 right. It's going to,
I don't know if you ever will.
It's a balancing act.
Yeah, I don't know if
it's
you ever
definitely
will.
a balancing act. It's not one of those things where, okay, I have the financial one right, I have the physical one right. Now I need to get the relationship one. It's not like bars where you're trying to get every single thing on the pole. I think it's literally like a pendulum, a bunch of pendulums, like 5 pendulums going back and forth, and you're trying to balance them all out. And I think the easiest one to hit on is being able to talk about proper sleep, proper nutrition, and just being able to explain that, and then living it, and then offering up certain things. Like, I remember with football, we would have those football dinners, and some of the football dinners weren't good, but then when you had the family that was really big on the nutrition, and they were the ones that were supplying the food for the football team, it was a really good meal, and we played really well the next day.
Sure.
I think it's one of those things where you just really provide opportunities for people to understand, and then they end up paving their own path. I'm not big into being an evangel and saying you're doing it all wrong. You're not supposed to do that. You're going to go to hell for that. I don't believe in that. But I think that being able to provide opportunities is a key.
Well, explain the other ones real quick, because I want to make a point. But tell everybody who's listening the other ones that you haven't mentioned.
Okay, so the next one is relationships, and obviously this is so obvious for coaches. Where you have a girlfriend, get rid of the girlfriend.
Yeah.
Because
it's a distraction.
It's a distraction. It can be a
not
positive too. Not all girlfriends and boyfriends are distractions.
It can be a positive too. It could be a bad friend. It could be.
But it could also be an unlock. That's the thing. Like girlfriends and boyfriends can be unlocks for players, where they end up going on just a absolute tear, and they end up balancing their life out because they feel connected with somebody. Right.
Sometimes there's also toxic parents.
That's true. I was
going to say 100%.
Sometimes
that is
100%,
and that there are bad influences on that you're distracting your players with some wrong information. They're out there.
Well, and it's being able to that's the hardest part about relationships, is knowing when you're in a toxic one and knowing how to get out of one.
Sure. Well,
everyone's been in that. Like everyone can state back like, oh yeah, I remember that, Stacy. That was a bad one.
It's probably when it's probably in a situation where you should be focusing on a certain, let's say, again, we're in sports, so you should be focusing on your game, whether it's a practice or a game, and you just can't not start thinking about that one relationship or what's going wrong or why isn't this or that or am I doing everything right or am I doing everything wrong? Well, now you're not focused on what you should be.
Yep. Or even like the team culture, like you have toxic team cultures.
100%.
Like it's a full-fledged audit of what relationships you have in your life and being able to capitalize on that. Also, and this is where I found that I was in a flow state, was when I felt connected to my inner circle, which my inner circle was my mom, my dad, my teammates, my coaching staff. Whenever I felt, or even my trainers, like my Missouri State trainers, I felt like they were really part of my inner circle, and I had to feel connected to them, and I always tried to build a relationship with them.
Sure.
So anyone that's in that inner circle, if there was a problem, then I had to really audit that inner circle and figure out, is it me or is it them? And then being able to assess off of that. The next thing is intellectual, and this is something that players are going to listen to it and be like, oh, I have to be good at school. That's not necessarily the case. You have to be good at school. Don't get that wrong. But it's being able to have the willingness to learn new skills and being able to seek out new skills and retain that information.
Always be learning.
Always be learning. And when I was playing, and I don't want this show to be about me, but I'm just trying to relay, I'm trying to make a point here and trying to give examples. When I was at Missouri State, I wanted to be a microbiology major, which I wanted to be a doctor. Mm-hmm. The labs killed me because I went to junior college. So I could not be a microbiology major. I did my first semester, and then second semester, I get a call from my advisor, and he's like, hey, you can't do this because you have all labs. So basically 12 hours of class and then 12 hours of labs, because I had to take all classes with labs. So there was no way. And I went to the teachers like, is there any way you can work with me? Like, no, you have to be in the labs or we're going to give you an F. And I was like, well, look, I'm not going to be a doctor. My advisor came up to me and said, hey, here are the majors that we recommend. And I looked at them like, these majors I don't like. It was exercise science, nothing wrong with exercise science, psychology, sociology, and criminology, and then also education. And I looked at it, and then I asked the guys in the clubhouse, like, hey, what's your major? Every single dude was in one of those majors. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, this is not interesting. I don't want the out. And again, there's nothing wrong with it. Like we had a lot of successful guys in our clubhouse. It's just I didn't want to be that major. And I ended up taking the harder route, which I went towards my passion and what my interest was, which was economics. And I remember Coach Gutton giving me a call, and he's like, are you sure you want to do that? Mm-hmm. And I go, yep. He goes, are you sure you want to do that? He kept on repeating it. I was like, that's what I want to do. And then my advisor calls me, and he's like, are you sure you want to do that? I'm like, yes, I want to do that. He's like, all right, I set up a meeting with the dean of that department. I was like, what?
Mm-hmm.
So I sit down with the guy, awesome dude, and he goes, Spiker, I'm supposed to sit here and talk to you about your major choice and if you would be a good fit for economics, and you're coming from microbiology. I'm really excited that you're here because you're an athlete. We don't have athletes in the economics department. But do you understand how much work it is? And it was one of those things where it was like, kind of?
Yeah.
I guess. And it was, and I look back at it and I'm thinking the reason I wanted to do that was because I was always searching to try to push the envelope forward, whether that was in trying to find a new skill set in my game or trying a new skill set in just with my mind and my brain. And like, I remember going into that first class of microeconomics and macro, and I was like, this sucks. This absolutely sucks. And my dad said, Spiker, it's just a language. It's just like learning Spanish. It's just like learning biology. It's just like learning math. It's just a language. Just decode it and you'll start enjoying it. And he was right. And I think a lot of people don't challenge themselves on the intellectual part when it comes to wanting to push the envelope and trying to learn a new skill set. And that search ends up fueling you for the last thing, which is that spiritual side. The spiritual side of, I'm going to go do this. I'm more in tune with who I am as a person and trying to go attack the thing that I want to go attack, like being attached to your passions and really, really not wavering off of that. Where in school, when you start going in that journey of baseball, you'll have a lot of people that'll come up and test you. And they don't mean to test you. It's just one of those things where they're testing you on, do you really like this thing? Mm-hmm. Is this thing the real deal? So those are the five. I don't. You said you wanted to bring up something, but that in all, and again, I view it as a pendulum, is like, it's never going to be perfect. Mm-hmm. You're never going to get it perfect. You're always going to be working on it. And also you're going to have some imbalances. It's just being able to know, and it just rang a bell with me when I was listening to this guy talk about it. I was like, damn, that is so true. Like if I think about, I couldn't put that into words, but if you think back on my career, I was just trying to figure out how to balance everything out. And I could really point back to, oh, I was really imbalanced here. Like I went through a really rough spot. And that's the reason why, because these two capitals were down and these three capitals were up. And like looking at it right now, like I did an assessment because the last couple of weeks I've been just like thinking like, man, I just feel like I'm out of tune on something. And it was not being able to test my intellectual side. Mm-hmm. I wasn't really testing the bounds of it. I was kind of in that comfort zone of just listening to the same thing over and over again. Like, you know how you get when you're on the internet, you get in those little rabbit holes and then you get stuck, and it's more of a funnel, not a rabbit hole.
Right.
And you just keep on listening to the same. It's like an echo chamber. You just listen to the same thing over and over again, and you're not testing the idea. Is like, is that really right or is it wrong?
So what I was thinking again, two different people, coaches who are of the age that they can grasp this. They've had enough real world knowledge, experience, ups, downs, ebbs and flows with these topics that they understand not only that they exist, they understand the importance of them, and they can hopefully understand how to navigate a situation to the player's benefit. Okay? Because I think when you're talking about all these five things, it's the five capitals, it's really hard for a young person, I don't even care if it's an athlete, to be aware.
Oh, it's extremely hard.
You can tell them. You could literally sit them down 20 times, I feel like, and talk about this topic. And it's going to go in one ear and out the other. They're not going to have enough experience in the world to actually grasp this or understand the importance. They'll just, oh, cool, I'm not eating that good or whatever. I'll see you tomorrow, okay? Or, yeah, I know, like, I got a couple friends that are trying to pull me in some bad directions, but, it'll work out. It's not a big deal. Like, They don't see the downward effects until it becomes really, really bad. That's how young people are.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that's how adults are. And that's the turning point for them. I think the aspect that I would pull from this, and I'm just taking it from a purely coach and player perspective, is the coach has to be the ultimate navigation expert of these topics. The coach, and this is different with player to player, this is different with team to team. Just like we were talking about at the start of this podcast, that every one of our teams is different. Every one of our players bring in different areas. We have to be aware of the landscape that we're dealing with, and it's our job not to talk about this in educational terms and read off a biography on why these are important, but to literally sit there and know and kind of see, okay, hey, there's Billy. Looks like he's down today. Looks like he's not doing good. Why is he on his phone over there? What's going on with him? Maybe it's a good opportunity to go take Billy to the side, say, what's up, dude? What's going on? You doing okay? Yeah, coach, but I got this going on over here. Well, good. I can help you navigate that. Here's some experiences, and we start to get them back to level par, right? Same thing. You see it in other areas. You see people distracted. Like you said, people are tired. Well, half of our players this summer didn't know they were tired. They really didn't.
Well, when we were saying that they were tired, you could see it in their eyes, this guy doesn't know if I'm tired or not.
Some of them knew, but most of them didn't. And so maybe it's if we have more time with them, maybe it's a situation where we try a bunch of different techniques and things to get that through their head of working harder in the weight room to maintain and eating right and getting your sleep and doing this, right? So there's things that we have to do as navigators to help them. One, know that that's an issue. Two, get them out of that issue. And then three, make sure they maintain and keep going in a positive manner. That's what a coach does, right? Because there's so much more in the X's and O's. I think as a young coach, I did more X's and O's teaching than I ever do now. I talked more about their swings. I talked more about their motions, their mechanics, how they feel at the ball, how they threw it, how they ran the bases, things like that. All important. But I put way too much emphasis on it. Where I think now I put way more emphasis on a lot of the other stuff, the stuff that you're talking about today. The stuff that's going to impact the X's and O's, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because if we can control that and get them better there and get them clearly focused on it and get them intent to be able to hit that on switch for the next 2 hours of our game, I like our odds. We got talented dudes who work hard at it and things like that. Now the player will never, ever understand this. You're just not, for every one of our dudes who've run through this program that I'm like, yep, you get it. There are 250 other dudes who just can't. And it's not their fault. It's because you're young.
Yeah.
For those players, it's your job to try to take in as much information as possible. You're not going to always agree with everybody, but if you see an adult or a coach or someone who's taking time out of their day to talk to you about a perceived issue that they think they can help with, it is your job to listen. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to love it, but it's your job to listen because it might help you. You got to think, why would that person be taking time out of their day? Just because they're generally, that's what they get off on. Let's go help everybody. Yeah, I want to be an influence everyone. No, it's because they want to impact you. Okay, so it's your job to listen. The best phrase I ever heard a long time ago was listen to everybody. You might hate 99% or 99 things out of 100 that I say, but the one that you don't might change your career forever. So listen. That's what your job is. So when I hear this, because this is like when you sent this topic, and we started this podcast, I was like, all right, giddy up. I don't know which way this is going to go because this is definitely a topic you're very passionate about and you listen and talk about, awesome. It's a complex topic that needs to be taught from a simple side, which isn't unsimilar to everything we talk about, but that's the route it has to go. So coaches, you have to understand, you got to be you got to be able to work these 5 topics into a simplistic nature that you can reach your audience with. But if you do, and you can start picking apart some of these issues that will come up in a season, in a year, and you can fix them, and you can get your kids turned around and focusing on the right thing, well, it all goes back to the reverse engineering of wins.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to the point where I'm not going to go the short route. I'm going to go the long route because I know the long route's going to get me more and a better result.
Well,
so
even sometimes we go long route on a lot of our obviously we go long route with our players, but you end up getting these text messages to be like, "Did you hear about this kid? What he did?" I was like, "Yeah, that was our guy." Like, but he doesn't play for us anymore. He's in college, and now he's doing really good.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's just part of that process of they learn that skill, that soft skill set here, and then they're able to apply it into the future. Like maybe they grab that one thing. Like one of the example, our 10th rounder this past year, Zach Cole, drafted in the 10th round with the Houston Astros. And I sent the text to my assistant coach, who is Travis Griffin. He's been on the podcast before. And he's probably one of the best coaches I've been around from a soft skill standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Like he really understands players and is able to communicate with them. He talks a lot, but
right.
He's able to communicate with them effectively, and he gets a lot of buy-in. And I don't know if, like, obviously Zach Cole is a really talented player, but part of me kind of thinks, like, how much impact did Travis have on that specific player that he was able to catapult out of? Because he had some ups and downs in his college career, and he just took off his junior year. Like, I wonder what the connection was. So I don't know. I've never had that conversation with Zach. I think that would be an interesting conversation, but it seems like those coaches, and he probably had some really good Ball State coaches there that were able to do that as well. But being able to get those soft skills out of him and drawing it out and end up being the dude and getting drafted in the 10th round.
When you look at a player, let's just put, again, because he's on the topic hand, when I look at a player, very rarely are you just going to say you were only impacted by one person your entire life. It never happens that way. Unless it's like, hey, my dad was always my coach and always my guy and my,
what's a group of people?
Confidant and everything. It normally isn't that. It's normally when you look at a player like a Zach Cole, I see 30 different faces that have impacted him.
Well, yeah, it's a group of people, but you also have that select group of coaches that end up, like, you can point to. Like, I'm sure that you have it in your career where you're
you can point to that have pivoted a player's career.
Yes.
Yeah. But not encapsulated why they're there.
But like my point is like, it seems like the coaches that take the long route,
oh sure, yeah, have a bigger impact.
Have a way bigger impact.
100%.
Like, example, Coach Culbertson of Longview Community College. Like,
yeah,
he had players for 2 years, and like he would always say, he's like, I really wish it was a 4-year university and I had all the guys, because damn, you guys are okay at freshman year, but then when you guys are seniors, you end up being the dudes.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was true.
Yeah.
Like, wherever those guys went, the guys that he coached, and they were starters, and they end up getting a ride somewhere, you could probably talk to every single dude, and you're like, well, who impacted you the most? And it's probably going to be, it's Coach Culberson and Coach Grado.
Yeah.
It's those dudes.
Yeah. Well, it's taking the extra time. It's very similar to everything we talk about. It's taking the extra time, looking in the details. That will be a separator. It's always is.
The last thing I wanted to say on this is that you always hear you just have to work harder. Like the Derek Jeter documentary that just came out.
I haven't seen that yet. Is it good?
I watched the first episode. It's not bad.
Okay.
Like, I kind of like where they went with it.
Good.
They haven't gotten into the A-Rod controversy yet. Like, I'm really looking forward to that. I'm hoping that they really dive into that, because there's just huge drama. If you don't know the whole drama, just Google it. You'll see. But they end up talking about how he was so positive and he was so convicted that he was going to play shortstop in Major League Baseball, that no one could waver him off of it. And it wasn't like a cocky thing. It was more of just a matter of fact. It wasn't even confident. It was just a matter of fact. Like, that's going to happen. And his parents, I'm hoping that people listen to it when they watch it, because it's very short when they explain it. His mom would be having conversations with her friends and family members, and they would say, well, you need to be more realist. You need to be more realistic. And she goes, I don't understand what you're talking about. Like, being realistic, what does that even mean? So you're telling me I should tell Derek that he can't play Major League Baseball, that he doesn't have the ability to do that? He's 8 years old. What am I supposed to do? Now, if you're like 21 years old and you're not even in the realm of Major League Baseball,
37-year-old, your career's over, John.
Then that's totally different, right? Or even like a 15-year-old, like, keep attacking, man. You still got a bunch of years left. Like, you have 3, 4, 5 years left. If you're lucky, you don't know what's going to happen. Roll those dice, buds. Go out there and get it, right?
Right.
And it was just a really interesting thing. And it was one of those things that I felt the same way, where my coaches were trying to be realistic. Like, Spike, you're not going to play Division I. You're just not going to. And I was like, I don't understand what you're talking about. Why are you trying to put that on me? You don't know. Now, if I'm 18 years old or 19 or even 20 years old and in junior college and there's no suitors, then yeah, I'll believe you. But stop telling me that. Give me some support. So it was just a very interesting, but where I was going with it was in the Derek Jeter documentary, Derek always talked about, I just had to put in all of the work. But one thing that was very underlining was what I just mentioned, was he didn't say this in the docu, but he was convicted. He had so much conviction. So it's not all about just working hard. You have to be able to cover your bases on the other 5. Because if you just work hard, you're going to be so imbalanced. It's not going to be fun. You're going to be in such a state where you have no connections with people. You're just going to be a robot. Like, no one likes that, and you're not going to like that. And you're going to be basically you're going to be sulking because you're like, man, my life sucks. All I do is just work at this one sport, and that's all I do. Like, that sucks.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So anyways, that was my last point, is that it's not necessarily, you have to work hard, but don't put all your chips into, if I just work a little bit harder. It's not
more
just
to
that.
it.
There's more to it.
More to it.
Guys, that's this episode of The Closing Pitch. My name is Spiker Helms. Across from me is David Birkby. If you like this episode, the biggest compliment that we could ever receive is being able to share it with one of your friends, colleagues, teammates, assistant coaches. That'd be a huge compliment to us. If you want to give us a review, great. 5 stars preferably. Just put it into the comments and saying, hey, I really enjoyed this part of the episode. We do read all those, so I appreciate it. Until next time, see ya.
Thanks, guys.